Beacon Institute for Rivers and Estuaries is privileged to call Beacon, New York its home. The heart of the Hudson Valley, the birthplace of the environmental movement. It's where the Hudson River inspired Pete Seeger to move mountains with the power of song. My name is Tim Shagru, the president and CEO of Beacon Institute. Since 2003, the Hudson River has allowed Beacon Institute to visualize a future where science, technology, and education answer the global call for entirely new ways to protect water. Pete Seeger, as you will see here, understood well the mission of Beacon Institute. Based upon performances and interviews from 2010, this video tells a story of Pete, in his own words and in those of others whose lives he touched. He was a great friend, and though he will be missed, our commitment is stronger than ever for having known him.
Sailing up my dirty stream, still I love it, and I'll keep the dream that someday, no, maybe not this year, my Hudson River will once again run clear. 5 million gallons of waste a day. Why should we do it any other way? Sailing up my dirty stream, still I love it, and I'll keep the dream.
He did it with music. He did it with, like he does with a big audience, he did it with me. And he pulled this one song out of his hat that just broke my heart. You know, sailing down my dirty stream, still I love it, and I'll keep the dream. I was putty. I was putty in his hands. I would have done anything he asked me to. And he said, John, I really want you to volunteer. I said, I'm there. Just give me the time and the place. Within a year, I was on the Clearwater staff. And 37 years later, it's been my life. It's been my career.
The happiest people I've ever known are people who are struggling to do something worthwhile. John started an organization, and they're reaching people all up and down the river now. What is an estuary? What is tide? Why does it change every 6 hours or so? And here, this wonderful center, and the building they've fixed up out on the point, this is all part of helping the people learn what they don't learn in school.
In conjunction with its Sunday Author Series, the Beacon Institute of Rivers and Estuaries hosted an intimate concert on April 18, 2010 with Pete Seeger, who also promoted his sing-along memoir, Where Have All the Flowers Gone?
Working on the Hudson River is almost the only thing I can remember out of my adult life. And it's because Pete set me on that path. But it's not just me. If I ask for a show of hands here, actually I'm going to, you'll be surprised how many people raise their hands. How many people in here decided to become interested in the river because of the message they heard through Pete or through Clearwater? Look at that. Look at all the hands up in this room. Isn't that marvelous? Well, multiply that times 100, multiply that times 1,000, and you know why the Hudson River became an environmental success story. Thank you, Pete, for what you did for me and for everybody else. And the simple lesson that he taught me back in 1973, which is more true today than it was even then, which is, whose river is it? All right, Pete.
First, isn't this an extraordinary building? She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. Toot, toot. Can you do that? Can you go toot, toot? She'll be coming round the mountain when she toot, toot. She'll be coming round the mountain, she'll be coming round the mountain, she'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. Toot, toot. She'll be wearing red pajamas when she comes. Scratch, scratch. She'll be wearing red pajamas when she comes. Scratch, scratch. She'll be wearing red pajamas, she'll be wearing red pajamas, she'll be wearing red pajamas when she comes. Scratch, scratch. Yum, yum. Ay, babe. Whoa, back. Toot, toot. I'll clap for you.
Over the course of his celebrated career, it has been children and the promise they hold to positively affect the future that has brought a smile to Pete Seeger's face. While Pete Seeger inspired generations of songwriters and environmental activists, one man served as his inspiration.
It was Woody Guthrie who let me know how to get started writing songs. He came to New York, it was the winter, February. He hitchhiked into New York City through Pennsylvania, and that's when he wrote the song that everybody in the country knows now, This Land Is Your Land. 20 years later, this song had never been played on the radio, never sold in any music store, but the whole country knew it because the kids liked the song and took it home with them. And they cut out what Woody felt was the most important verses. Was a great high wall there that tried to stop me. Was a great big sign there, said private property. But on the other side, it didn't say nothing. That side was made for you and me. Well, Woody Guthrie went through World War II with a sign on his guitar saying, "This machine kills fascists." And we said, "Woody, the war's over. Hitler's dead. Mussolini's dead. Why don't you take the sign off?" He said, "This fascism comes along whenever the rich people get the generals to do what they want." And that's a good definition of fascism. Well, Woody went into a hospital with an incurable mental disease, and I thought I'd put something a little more peaceful on it. This machine surrounds hate and forces it to surrender.
As a member of the Weavers, Seeger was blacklisted in the 1950s during the McCarthy era, accused of being a communist.
It didn't hurt me a bit. I went on singing in colleges. True, an occasional college, President Gideon Z. of Brooklyn College said I would not sing there as long as he was president. But finally he retired. Oh, I had a manager. He says, "Pete, you put out a book of civil rights songs. You put out a book of union songs. You put out a book of old ballads. Put out a book of children's songs." He says, "Why don't you put out a book of your own songs?" Well, I thought it would just be a few months I'd get it. But the more I got into it, I realized I was explaining why I wrote this song, why I wrote that song, and how come I was able to find a tune for this set of words. One chapter is all about finding tunes for old words. One tune I thought I had written, 30 years later I find it was just an old tune I'd slowed down. It was a song sung by George Washington Troops. Doodle, 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 dandy, cornstalk rum and a homemade brandy, Indian pudding and a pumpkin pie. That will make those Yankees fly. Brum, 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 bum, bum. Marlene Dietrich, the famous actress, toured the world. After she was through being a movie actress, she put on a one-woman show on every continent, every big city in the world, and she had Where Have All the Flowers Gone translated into German by a friend of hers. It sings better than the English. Sag mir, wo die Blumen sind, wo sie geblieben. I forgot the words. Sag mir, wo die Blumen sind. Was ist geschehen? Sag mir, wo die Blumen sind. Mädchen pflückten sie geschwind. Wann wird man je verstehen? Wann wird man je verstehen?
Pete's bringing some stuff out of, what we would call the B-sides. he's bringing some other songs out, and the one that I'm doing today is actually a poem written by a Japanese woman, translated to English, set to music by Pete.
When I was most beautiful, cities were falling, and in unexpected places, blue skies appeared. When I was most beautiful, I was most unhappy. I was quite absurd. I was quite lonely. That's why I decided to live long, like Monsieur Rawald, who was a very old man when he painted such terribly beautiful pictures. You see,
because I spent a few years helping a couple of prisoners in Green Haven prison get free. They were on death row, but they were innocent. And we got lawyers for them, and they did get acquitted. They got off death row. But then I got thinking of the whole symbolism of what is death row. Walking down death row, I sang for 3 men destined for the chair. Walking down death row, I sang of lives and loves in other years. Walking down death row, I sang of hopes that used to be. Through the bars into each separate cell, yes, I sang to 1 and 2 and 3. If you'd only stuck together, you'd not be here. If you could have loved another's lives, you'd not be sitting here. And if only this you could believe, you might still be reprieved. The human race is on death row if we don't straighten up and fly right. I'm more optimistic about my country than I ever have been. My mantra is, the agricultural revolution took thousands of years. The industrial revolution took hundreds of years. But the information revolution is only taking decades. And if we use it, and use the brains God gave us, who knows what miracles will happen in the next few years. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. Time. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to read, a time to plan,
In the same fashion that Pete Seeger has masterfully used music to successfully promote the Hudson River, the Beacon Institute of Rivers and Estuaries is providing one-of-a-kind programs aimed at teaching awareness through technology and science. This sustained effort ensures that the historic and environmentally priceless Hudson River is safely passed from generation to generation.
A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to gain, to rend, to sow, a time to rend.